and we worked alongside them, learned from them. So we actually paid them as employees, but basically we were paying for mentorship, and we trained underneath them. Like I remember early on, this is anybody who's in fashion, you're welcome to like hate me for what I'm about to say, but I'm gonna admit some real.
Uh, I think we're always creating. So unlike other brands that are like, this is our autumn winter, this is our spring summer. For us, it really is that journey. So we release capsule collections that we call chapters. And they drop kind of all the time. So the store is constantly evolving and changing. Same with the website and what you see on it. So we've been exploring some new things. We have a sort of sub brand that's called Foreign that has a bunch of new stuff coming out. And the theme of that is everything is foreign until it's familiar, right? So like we're all foreign to each other. We all can look at the differences, but then once you make that connection, once you engulf yourself in somebody else's existence and their culture and their life and their being, then that becomes familiar to you and, it becomes like family. So that's one. We have our Free the Pages campaign right now, which is really, I think, close to our hearts. Both of us have kids. So looking at, Jason's wearing one of those. So looking at the book bans that are happening across the United States, and they're especially, I think, pulling and attacking books that deal with culture, with diverging ideologies, gender, and they're pulling those books from schools and they're limiting what our children are able to read. And so we created a series of shirts and other items as well that sort of speak to this in a very Orwellian fashion. So it's a bit sarcastic. It's like, what would the world look like if we had no books or if we really banned books to a criminal aspect? And then with those, we're using a portion of those proceeds to go to the Legal Defense Fund for the NAACP as well as PEN America. So that one, I think, is pretty close passion project for us because it's relevant and it's now. We often deal with historical stories, which I love, and they look into our past and our history, I think, as human beings. But there's also so much going on right now. So for us, it's cool to be able to address those things that affect, I think, our culture and our nation, and our world in general. I'm trying to think of what else. There's so much stuff. We got like
there's a lot of
stuff on
those
the
are that's what's coming out in terms
of
of design. But I think what you're going to see is a lot more different cultures and philosophies that we're going to be touching upon. One of our uncles who was involved in South Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, when we really started this project, he said to me, Jason, you're really digging into your history, right? Because at the time we were telling only stories really that originated from Africa, right? And I said, okay, that's one way of looking at it. And he's like, the thing about it is, though, as you dig into your own history, you can't but help to dig into all people's histories. And that's the reality of it, because ultimately we're all human beings. It's all common ancestors, right? And so what you're going to see from us is we've already touched upon some themes that are coming from Europe. We did a long series on the amazing American writer, Joseph Campbell. You're seeing things that are going to be coming out from us that are crossing down into the Americas. We have an amazing collaboration right now with the world-renowned artist Carlos Luna, who's Cuban and also did a lot of his work in Mexico. But what you'll find is as we cross all these waters and all these places, the themes are still universal. They still apply to all of us. And so I think that's what you're going to continue to see us do.
I wanted to ask about the textiles you were talking about. How are you influenced by the textiles that you choose by your culture?
I think it's a little bit of both. For us, it's not so much influenced by our culture, but it's influenced by the story. So for us, every single detail within a garment has to tell that story in some way. So when we're dealing with, and it has to reflect that. And that could go to color, right? We might choose from a design aesthetic. We'll say, oh, that would look great in red. And our art director will say, yeah, but red has the opposite cultural meaning for the story that you're trying to convey. So then we're going to change it so that we make sure that even the colors have the historical meaning they should to be able to convey the ideology. And that same goes for the textiles. So where we're sourcing the textiles from, it can be important from the story aspect, the quality that we're using, the colors that we're using, how that fabric can even be workable. So when we're dealing with different designs, a lot of this stuff is very intricate. So can that be accomplished in a knit versus a cotton? Does it have to be printed? Does it have to be embroidered? What's going to give that layering effect? So most of our designs take a significant amount of time just because of that, because they're meant to convey ideas. So that has to be seen. And sometimes that needs to be three-dimensional, and sometimes it needs to be interwoven because we're talking about interwoven ideas. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest impact that our materials have. But sustainability is important to us as well.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily call ourselves an ethical company because we're not, just because we're story driven, and so that's our focus. However, for us, it's really important. So we use either, there's family owned factories we use. Some of them, our cotton mill has the highest technology, uses all electronic vehicles. Our wool mohair is all sustainably sourced in South Africa. It's all dyed there. We follow the strain of our materials from beginning to end. So almost everything that we do is crafted for us. Yeah. So we know what we're sourcing, what's going in it, and what's going to be that final end product.
And speaking of sustainable products, we can't show it yet, but trust me, there's the dopest. We're so proud of this. This is the dopest slide sandal to drop. It's dropping this side of the year. It's a collaboration with this company called Hylos. If you look them up, it is sustainable through and through. We're using 3D printing technology. We're embedding messages into every aspect of this thing. So we're really excited about that. Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
So with the messaging, behind your material and your clothing, for someone that's purchasing your clothes, and they're aesthetically, they're looking at it and be like, man, that is cool. How important is it for you, for people to understand the message behind the clothes?
I think it's mixed. We have people the funny thing is it kind of grows on them, we found, at least so far in our interactions with people. Some people come in and they're just like, oh, that's a dope design. I like the white and black. I like how that's laid out. I'm going to get that. Well, you don't it's hard to leave our store without understanding the story because our employees are so amazing. So you're going to get a snippet of that before you go. You're going to understand why it is. And what we find is that sometimes people feel even prouder to wear it once they understand the symbolism behind it. So at first, they walked out and they're like, I just thought this was a cool shirt. And then they start telling other people, somebody's like, oh, that's a cool shirt. And they're like, yeah, but it's even cooler because, right? It's even more interesting because of that. And they start sharing and conveying those stories down the line. And all of that's on our website as well. So we find that people end up even more tied to the piece because they understand the meaning and the ideology behind it. Now, some still might wear it and just be like, it looks swaggy, I like the message. And, not all messages have to be overly complex. Some of them are really simplistic ideas. But I think just that in our experience, we found that they keep coming back, and they come back for the story even more than the design.
Yeah, it's because you walk into your store, they've got multiple TV screens and big screens that, is basically kind of giving you the story. They walk through, the history of where the company originated, the story about the garment itself and different things. So that's why I said it's like walking into a museum of knowledge. And as I always like this, well, with my brand, I'm more of a mindset brand. I'm not so much a clothing brand. I tell people like this, I'm the Just Do It of Nike. I'm not Nike. But even with my brand, is people, for the longest was like, Tim, I just want a shirt with the F on it. Yeah. When I first started. And for me, I didn't want to do that because I felt like that was something that you had to grow into, is being able to use a symbol. As it pertains to McDonald's, when it first started, they didn't just use the arches. Over a period of time, people had to recognize those arches and was like, oh, that's McDonald's.
Yeah.
Same thing with Starbucks, and the list goes on and on. So that's why it was important for me with my brand not to just use the F starting out. It was more important for me to have people know the message behind the brand. Because for me, as a mindset brand, the clothes is what pushes the message.
That's exactly right.
And so that was something that was important to me. And you gave me a shirt, and I wore it for the first time, and I had an overwhelming amount of attention that I got from wearing that shirt. Like, and it was like it vastly became one of my favorite shirts. The shirt you gave me, tell them the message.
So there's
Which one was it?
it's a secret.
Oh.
So it's a crazy story, but in short, there's writing on the shirt. It says, "In comparison to the ancients, we stand like dwarves on the shoulders of giants," which was later paraphrased by Isaac Newton. If I've seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants, which was later paraphrased by Carl Sagan, etc. But where it comes from is it was a statement by this medieval bishop in France. There's a cathedral in a town. What is like?
Chartres.
Yeah, Chartres is like what, hour and a half, 2 hour train ride from
About
Paris.
2 hours, yeah.
So when you go there, there's this massive cathedral, and at the time, it was the second most important cathedral in France outside of Notre Dame. And even to this day, people will do a pilgrimage once a year and walk from Notre Dame to this cathedral. Now, what's interesting about this cathedral, sorry, it's a long-winded story, but I'm a nerd, brother.
Well,
So,
that's the reason why I opened the dialogue up, because I do want you to dive into
okay. So what's interesting about this cathedral, so you got to think about this, right? We're talking about medieval France, and we're talking about a bishop of a Catholic church, right? So his job is to push like Christian, Catholic, orthodoxy, right? That's his position. But yet embedded into the nave of this cathedral is a labyrinth. So something of non-Christian origin predates, right? It's like King Minos, and you think of like all these old stories. So why would he take something of pagan ideology and embed it into the second most important cathedral, right? Where they're pushing Christian and Catholic ideology. Well, it comes back to that statement. He was acknowledging, saying, in comparison to the ancients, like all those people who came before, we're like dwarves standing on the shoulders of giants. They're giants. We got to learn from them. They had knowledge, which is clear for anybody who's traveled to Europe, right? I mean, a lot of Europe is still existing on Roman infrastructure, right? From thousands of years before aqueducts and all the rest, right?
Yeah.
You go there, you know that. But that was for me, it was really moving because like not only is the statement in itself like true and causes you to think, but then when you also consider the environment in which it was spoken, it becomes that much more powerful. So we like to tell people, wear the story. So you were wearing that story, and I hope people were feeling the energy coming off of you, brother, as you wore it.
You know what? It felt like I was wearing the Holy Grail, like, and I couldn't remember, and as much as when people were complimenting me on the shirt, as much as I wanted to like dive into it, I'm like, don't say nothing because you're not gonna say it right, and you go, it's that old game where you line people up and you say one thing, and by the time it gets back around, it's completely
different.
and then it's completely different. And so I didn't want to do it any injustice by telling the story behind it. But yeah, even putting it on, it felt like I was putting on a shroud of history. And so it's just you guys' apparel in general. I don't really know offhand, and I'm not claiming to be a fashionista or someone that's really educated as it pertains to fashion and design and all of that. But for me, I don't know of any other brand that puts so much history, knowledge, messages, all of that into their apparel. Like, I don't. Like, Chanel is Chanel, Gucci is Gucci. Every now and then they may have a line that comes out that, that explains an event
Yeah.
or a person.
Yeah.
But for you to dialogue and catalog history like you've done it with your apparel, man, it just, man, I got tired hearing y'all talk about everything, and for you, the thought that goes into color, the stitching, the fabric, and all of that has a story within itself.
It's the only way we know how to honor it.
Oh,
That's the bottom line, right? We're talking about like our forefathers. And when I say our, I'm not just talking about our community. I'm talking to the whole world. Everybody, if you're listening, trust me, you hear this right now, you come from a people, a place, a history that has contributed something significant to our collective experience. You are all worthy. And so, for us, as we tell those stories, we do everything in our power, whatever we're limited to, but we do it within our power to do that as honorably and consistently and thoughtfully as possible. That is the best way to pay homage.
Yeah. That's the beauty of fashion. You're able to tell that story. You're able to tell a story. You're able to dive into whatever culture, history. So if we all be able to do that, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
So what would you tell someone that's growing into this?
Into fashion?
Right.
I think that it's not for the faint of heart, I'll say that, but I think that's about entrepreneurship in general, So I think anytime you're venturing out and you're going into a business or an industry that you're passionate about, you definitely have to have that grit, right? You definitely have to keep going. It's funny with fashion, though, because the people that we recognize and that we think are really big, all of a sudden it's like, oh, they just came on the scene, right? That's our thought. We're like, they're this new up-and-comer. But when you really learn their history, you're like, oh, these people were grinding it out in trade shows for like 15 years.
You're just now hearing about
You're just
it.
now hearing about it. So it's like you don't break through till you break through. So
Exactly.
you can't let those, I think, that lack of accolades or the roadblocks dissuade you from doing something that you're passionate about. Mentorship, I think, is huge in any career that you want to go into, in any industry. I think it's something that we've walked away from a lot more. And being able to find, people who've been in that industry for a while that you respect the work that you're doing, and be humble enough to listen. Even if you have your own way of doing things, your own creative expression, as you would as an artist, you can still learn a lot from those people who have, I think, paved the way and who have put in their time to do that. So that to me is huge. Find a mentor, definitely stick with it. Dare to do something different, right?
That's
it doesn't
right
have
there.
to be
Yeah.
this mold of what fashion is and what you feel like designing for a trend because you think this person's going to wear it, or I'm just going to make something that I think is they like create to create, make beauty and art to make beauty and art, tell stories to tell stories, to spread what's uniquely, I think, different about the way you think and your artistry and your ideology, and go forward with that, be brave in that, because that's the only way I think that the industry grows. Is if you have those new ideas.
And don't limit yourself, right? Like, that's the other thing because I know one of the questions was raised earlier, like, for our culture, right, for Black culture when it comes to design. Like, I know that within our culture, there's sometimes we'll say, no, we can't do that because Black people don't do that, right? That's nonsense. Like, if you're a Black person and you do it, guess what? Black people do it. You know what I'm saying? So, like,
Exactly.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't be self-limiting. You know what I mean? As I said, you're all worthy. Your ideas are worthy. Your expressions are worthy. And you don't know. You could be the next person to create an entirely new movement, a new way of looking at design, a new way of approaching life, a new way of practicing in the fashion business. So please don't limit yourself, and don't listen to others who are like, nah, that's not possible. All that means is it's not possible for them. You know what I'm saying? So it could be possible for you. That's why you pulled the idea from the ether. So don't let somebody else who can't pull that same idea from the ether tell you that, nah, it can't happen. Because then you're the one who actually can accomplish it, self-limit, and then it doesn't occur. So that was the only thing I wanted to add on to what you were saying.
100%.
I think that is so important because I mentor people as well that have an interest in getting into this industry. And one of the things that I tell them is like you said, just dare to be different. Um, Take that leap. Uh, do things that are non-traditional. And just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I say sometimes we can be too black. you know, we can be too black. It's like, oh, we gotta make sure we cater to only the black people. Everything has got to be black oriented and this and that and this and that. And it's so funny because Bobby Woodson, Bobby Wilson Woodson, the activist. I listened to his stuff. A friend of mine recommended him, and one of the things that he was talking about, he was like, as it pertains to the critical race theory, he said he doesn't believe in the critical race theory. He say it should be more of the critical grace theory. And the reason why he said that is like every ethnicity, every culture has its own struggles. Just because we are centered on the black struggle, there's people that are living in Silicon Valley that they're losing kids at a rate of like, it was a crazy number, like 75% of child suicide is coming from the rich Silicon Valley families. And so
within that microcosm, they're facing serious tragedy.
Exactly. And so that's why he
Yeah.
said we need to get away from more of the critical race theory and start concentrating more on the critical grace theory, is because we all have that same struggle. We all have that same struggle. And it kind of alludes to what you were saying, is like, if we get so focused on having to do this and be within this box,
Yeah.
we leave out so much that could be the groundbreaking, history changing thing, because we're so centrally focused on the one thing. And I'm glad you said that, because I say that all the time. It's like, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And getting out of your comfort zone is also sometimes getting out of your community. Is you don't become well versed about this world just looking at it through the lens of a black man or a black woman. You can't. That's not possible. Because like you said, we all nationalities, all races have come together to create something.
Yeah.
And if you look through these lenses of a particular race or ethnicity, you really, really limit yourself.
Yeah, and the more you travel, I mean, just take our communities right here in the U.S. Travel from the West Coast to down south. Already you're going to find a wide variety, even amongst our culture, on perspective and the way things, the way people view things, right?
Take
Now,
that to
take
black
that.
people in the UK or in
That's
Africa, completely different cultures, completely different struggles. I mean, there's some similarities, but there's different
Obviously.
struggles,
And then you take that even further, and it just becomes that multiplying effect. Like, I've been lucky, and Jennifer's been lucky to have been able to travel a lot. We have been to more places than most, and I would say that I've been to enough places to know that I still haven't seen shit. This world is so damn big.
Yes.
There's so much that I know nothing. I've seen enough to know. I can say, hey, I haven't seen shit, everybody.
That's so on point. Is I've traveled a lot, and a lot. Most of my travel is stateside. I've lived in 30 of the 50 states, including Puerto Rico. I went to 4 different high schools in 4 different states. I've traveled all over the world, and like you said, it's like I've done a whole lot of nothing when I realized the big scope of what's out there.
yeah.
All that did was make me more curious.
Yep.
That didn't make me way more knowledgeable. It just made me more curious, because it was almost like everywhere I went, there was a to be continued.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to relay that message to everyone, not just young adults, not just blacks, just everybody in general. Stop spending money on something that doesn't educate you about the world that you live in. And how you do that is through travel. And once again, it kind of goes back to that ignorance thing that I talked about earlier. The more that we can educate ourselves about other people's culture, the more things become more plain and more clear, and you have a clear understanding of the whys. And so it's, and not to mention, like, if you're venturing into anything in life, to be able to gain that knowledge and that experience from travel just is gonna just elevate you even more.
100%.
Because it's like what you said. Like, I always use analogies, and I being growing up in all of these different places is like, I grew up in Illinois, and so for me, we had to have something, like, for us to have a good time. Like, we had to have the latest toy. And then I spent some of my childhood in Louisiana, where there was a city of 10,000 people, where we made our own fun.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, even as an adult, some of the best times I've had in my life is when I was the brokest.
Right.
Just think about it. Like,
Invent things to do.
because you actually had to use your imagination and come up with something, and it wasn't something that was just put in front of you. And so that's what travel does for you. Travel takes you to places that you can't, it teaches you things that you cannot read in a book, that you cannot watch on a video. Because I guarantee you, the places that I've been, I've seen the pictures and seen the video, and it did not do it any justice at all. You know, so, you know, to the viewing audience, man, just get out and travel. Like, it's not as expensive as people think it is.
No.
And if you look at your daily expenses and what you really spend money on, you know, if you took half of that and
it's
took some time.
It's a huge blessing too. Like, I don't know if this is true, so don't quote me on it. But I was scrolling through Instagram and came across one person who's like, "Hey, do you know how much money you need to make in order to be in the top 1%?" And he was like,
Yes,
"No. Did you see that?"
I did
he
see
was
that.
like, "No, not top 1% in America, top 1% in the world."
This is going to be crazy.
And
Listen to this.
it was something like $32,000 or $37,000 a year to be in
the top 1% in the world.
I haven't fact checked this, but having traveled, that makes a lot of sense when you think the number of people that exist out there. When you think about the disparity in wealth, it makes a lot of sense. So at the same time, it's like, hey, those of us who are here, where we are in America, with the opportunity to be able to make money like this and be able to go to places where they don't have those same abilities, you're at an advantage. You're at a huge advantage to be able to go and see things around this earth that many others won't ever have.
It's so funny. I saw that the other day, and it put so much in perspective for me, because we live in a corporation. I don't call it country. We live in a corporation where we have had blinders on for so long about what success looks like.
Yeah.
And I say that when I do my motivational speaking engagements, and I say, look, not everybody's idea of success is the same. If you came from a third world country to have running water, clothes, and food, and you were able to obtain those things, you're a success.
Yeah.
I'm looking at now, in probably 4 years, moving out of the United States. And so I've done a big dive into cost of living in other places. And honestly, I looked at 15 places, and just off my benefit income, I could live like a king. So it puts it in perspective that as it pertains to the world, why I would be, or why you would be, everybody in here is in the top 1% in the world. You hear people say, you know, I'm a 1%er. Everybody in the U.S. basically is a 1%er.
Yeah.
And you would never know that if you did not get out and see this world and understand how blessed you truly are. But what it does, once you come back, it gives you a whole different perspective of how we live and the things that we take for granted. Like, it's crazy to me. And did anybody else have any questions? Man, this was.
No, I do want to say though that I really love Thank you for sharing. I've learned so much today, your journeys, and I really love the story that you put behind your clothes because right now I'm in the midst of changing out my wardrobe because I realize like the clothes we put on our body, it has power behind it. So when you say that you're putting these clothes on you, but they have a story behind them, like I'm into the material we put on our body and the story that the material has, and then we go further into the people that are creating these clothes. They're putting their energy. We talk about frequency, or I talk about frequency. They're putting their frequency into that. You're then merging it with your own. So there's layers upon layers of these clothes that we put on our bodies, and the fact that you're putting these magical stories into your clothes is just so inspirational.
Thank you.
Wow,
so
that means
much.
the
That
world.
means a
Thanks. You
lot.
come through and get styled with us.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
come
I
and get
had
your
fun too.
She would be the one, and she's our resident tree hugger slash earthy, in touch with, you know, energy. Like, it's truly, I joke about it, but it's really a blessing to have her on the show. Is because she gives us such a holistic perspective. Like, we talk about things, she digs into things and gives us the underlining of the energy and all of that stuff that comes with it. And so you leave, you know, listening to her talk, you're like, okay, it's a little bit deeper than what I thought
Thank
and
you,
what
Tim.
I
Thank
imagined.
you.
No, it's
But
true. I mean,
it really
yeah.
is true with I mean, it's so much more powerful and deeper than anyone who's listening even realizes. That the clothes that we merge with our skin changes us. It becomes a part of us, and so it really is incredible that you guys take that just even deeper. I love
Thank you.
the sustainability, the stories. I love how deep you go.
And I think everybody can probably identify with what you're saying, actually, with one clear example, right? Let's say that you have a piece of clothing that was left to you by your mother or your father. I can't put on one of my dad's old jackets and walk out the house without that man speaking to me. Like, he's with me, his perspective, the love that he gave me, you know, as I grew, I carry that with me just through the garment, because that garment's embedded with my association with him, right? Or that would be true that you could put on something that your mother or grandmother handed you down, it would be the same. So I think that we do inherently understand that it is energy, and that we can feel it when it comes alive. And so, yeah, thank you for touching on that. It's real, though. I don't think it's just tree huggy.
Thank you. And thank you for putting such magical stories into the clothes that we merge with our bodies.
Man, this,
Awesome.
like, every time I think we have like a top show, we have another one that tops it. Like,
right.
and you know, it's so crazy because, you know, the last couple of days have been kind of difficult for me because, you know, unfortunately, as most people have, you know, I lost someone that was really, really close to me, and not close to the point that we hung out all the time. I was close to him for the point that I knew him for a long time, but we also share intimate stories about each other's lives, and that's what drew me even closer to him. And so when he passed away yesterday, it made this conversation even more special, because me and him had conversations about like this, about lives, histories, connecting, and all of these different things. And so I just would encourage people to not take time and life for granted, because we know not the hour, the day that it's going to end. And so, you know, as it pertains to what we're doing, is don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. And just walk to that edge and just jump. Like, whatever it is that you're passionate about, just do it. Just do it, because the one commodity that we have in our life that once it's gone, we can never get it back, is time. It's time. And what's so sad is that the one commodity can never be replaced. We give it away like it's worth nothing. And so I want to end, today's conversation is I want to encourage people to start valuing your time. Because when people start seeing you value your time, they start respecting and valuing your time. But you very well cannot expect somebody to do something that you're not willing to do for yourself. And so I want to thank you guys, Unknown Union.
Thank you guys so much for having us on. This is amazing.
For coming on.
Thank you so much.
You guys are an encouragement. You guys have uplifted not only the people in this room, but I'm sure the people that are watching and listening. And this is not it. We've got some future stuff that we're working on with Unknown Union, and so this is a family thing.
More to come.
Yeah. We just want to give y'all a little bit, but we working on some things, man. And I'm so encouraged, and I'm so happy, because you go through them points in your life where God starts removing people out of your life, and you ask yourself why. And most of the time, it's God saw something that you didn't see. But the other thing is that God are moving people out of your life to replace them with people that need to be in your lives. And so I it's just a blessing that you guys how you guys came into my life, and moving forward, the things that we've talked about that we plan on doing, man, it's got God's hands all over it. And so I just want to thank you guys. We're glad to have our prodigal son back in. And it's this one is for the record books. So as we end all shows, love, peace, and soul.